All right, welcome back to the Elias Makos Show. Let's head over to the one, the only, former host of this time slot on CJAD, now big shot at the city of Montreal. Leslie Roberts is on the line. Hi, Leslie.
Little shot. Good morning. Nice to be with you.
Associate councillor on the executive committee responsible for the English-speaking community, universities, downtown core. That's a big shot in my books. Okay, Leslie, let's talk about the better safe than sorry approach that we saw in preparation for, the freezing rain that we got. I driving into work yesterday, I was literally just driving on salt. I could just hear the mounds of salt that I was driving on. How do you think we handled it? Better safe than sorry? Are you a fan of the approach?
Let me back it all up. We've learned from previous ice storms, obviously, one a couple of years ago, and then the famous one that you're far too young to remember, perhaps, Elias, but I covered as a junior reporter at Pulse News back in the day. I would say that, and I feel for those who are still in the dark, who are still facing issues because outside of Montreal proper. But here in the city, I would say we, quote unquote, dodged a bullet. Mm-hmm. That is, the storm was not as bad as we expected. However, we weren't going to take any chances. The civil protection oversaw everything. We opened up shelters. We had some on standby. We were ready to go should the power go out. I remember in 1989 covering out in Loyola live with Bill Hoagland anchoring. I was standing there as a reporter, and it was NDG residents who had taken had been out of their homes and into the shelter. And as I left, I was walking down Sherbrooke Street West and the Army was coming in. I mean, it wasn't going to be that, and we weren't going to allow it to become that. So the night before, when we had the so-called orange warning, which is the new Environment Canada and Climate Control Canada, whatever they're called now, a warning that said this was the potential. So we prepared for the worst, and the good news is it didn't come. And more importantly, I think we honestly did very well, and we continue to monitor things as it's not quite over. As you know, there, especially in the outlying areas of the city, in the burbs, you have the trees with the ice on there, and then we have gusts of winds. That could potentially become a problem. But so far, so good. Fingers crossed. And yes, I would say we did quite well as a city.
And numbers going down in the right direction when it comes to hydro outages. We're just shy of 12,000 homes without power in Montreal. We started the show this morning at 25,000, and we're at 150,000 homes across Quebec. Of course, again, a significant drop. So going in the right direction. I just need to ask you, because there is an economic impact when you basically shut things down. And I heard from the business people, like, I was supposed to do this morning. Everything got shut down. I get it, like protecting 8-year-olds going to elementary school. I'm all on team, let's protect them. When you hear that, Concordia and McGill, they're like, oh, there may be ice, shut down the classes. And, we've been trying to get people to go downtown. A thought or two on the economic aspects, because for one day, that's a lot of revenue that's not being made. And I heard from the restaurants too, some of the top restaurants in the city that normally have waiting lists had no shows and open seats.
Yeah, and it was a discussion, actually. I just came out of the CCU, which is the Permits Commission, and it's made up of a panel of architects and urban planners and so on, and we had the same conversation at the beginning of the session. And they said, in one particular case, they said it was great. I came out, one gentleman who lives in Old Montreal said, I came out of my place and I went looking, and all the restaurants were closed, but the streets were great. So, it was almost like counterproductive, right? But I think in a lot of the cases, it was voluntary. We at the city, we all went teletravail. We worked from home. We had our executive committee meeting, via Teams, and we took no chances. That was the directive at City Hall. And I think to your point, each of these restaurants acted accordingly, maybe as a result of in their own decision that we don't want to take the chances, or number two, the very reason what happened is that nobody was coming downtown.
Yeah, totally.
And it was one day. It was one day.
All right, Leslie, I want to turn our attention to the war on cars, as they call it. Now, some people would say
Who's they?
Over the years. And by the way, some people would say that one of the reasons why Ensemble Montréal was so successful last November is that people had grown frustrated with that war on cars in some respects from Projet Montréal and Mayor Valérie Plante at the time, and they wanted a pivot, okay? And then this week we find out that in the very large populous borough, Côte-des-Neiges NDG, they are going to vote on adding parking meters to just a large swath of Sherbrooke Street West, from Grand all the way to the border with Westmount. It gets approved. It goes through. And now a lot of people that weren't paying for parking when they visited shops are going to have to pay for parking. It's not just on Sherbrooke Street. It's on the intersecting streets as well, where people would try and skirt the parking on Sherbrooke Street. Some would say that's an anti-car move. What do you say to that? And why was it necessary to add parking meters?
Okay, I'll start by saying, look, as a former journalist, I know the idea is to get a headline. So war on cars looks great, and even the opposition can use it as a buzz phrase. I get it, but we're not removing parking, right? And so let's get that clear. First of all, I also want to point out that this week, our friends up in Ahuntsic-Cartierville eliminated the meters at Claude Robillard so that we were promoting more time getting healthy and so on. So there's another example where it's the contrary of the headline. But let's go back to NDG Côte-Neige. And I knew you were going to ask me this because it is the story of the day. And I spoke to the acting mayor there, Sonia Morose, who confirmed for me that the studies were there and that it shows that it's long overdue. And this is about fluidity. This is better for small businesses. This is the bottom line here. So we're actually helping the local mom and pop shops. How are we doing that? Well, the current setup is it wasn't monitored the same way as it would be if it was paid parking. So a car would sit there for hours, even longer than was allowed. And because we didn't have the same enforcement, it basically stopped the fluidity from happening and another car coming in there and then the small business getting another potential.
So turnover. You think you're going to increase turnover on the street?
And you just took the words right out of my mouth. This is about supporting local businesses. And then I'll just add, since the super hospital, and in that area, again, below de Maisonneuve, but also very much in that area, walking distance, parking has been very difficult for the local residents. We've heard about that as well. So this is going to help them. And we're talking east of Décarie specifically, who've been asking for it. So basically, as our old slogan goes, écouter, agir, that's what we've done here.
So are you telling me that the money that will be raised from parking meters, this is big business, by the way, parking meters, you got to pay now. Those spots are paid. That wasn't part of this consideration because it seems like the city, they want new revenues.
I don't have a direct answer for. I mean, I would say this would be my guess because I'm not involved in this dossier specifically, but absolutely this is a new revenue. But at the same time, we're not talking a lot of money. This is not prime downtown parking where you get a higher rate, right?
Yeah.
This will be considered a local neighborhood, the same way it would be on Monkland or wherever.
Okay, Leslie, listen, thanks for talking to us and talking to our listeners this morning. It's always fun chatting with you. Come back real soon, okay?
I appreciate it. Thanks, Elias.
Leslie Roberts right there, Associate Councillor on the Executive Committee, responsible for Anglos, universities, and the downtown core.
Introducing Bryan Adams Radio on iHeartRadio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
Join me for an insider look on a wild ride through 40 years of global rock and roll.
Bryan Adams Radio. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app. Or ask your smart speaker to play Bryan Adams Radio on iHeartRadio.
Who's ready to rock?
Kids wanna rock.